We can work with that. We can work with that.
Now, the meaning of reap is to obtain as a result of effort. And the fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance. Kingdom builders, reaping the fruits of the Spirit. You see, we were placed here for the sole purpose of building up the temple of God. We all know that song, Building Up the Temple? That's all we are here for. When we are working on the kingdom though, our building strategy is battle. We must battle against principalities and powers and wickedness in high places. We must fight against the darkness of the world, as said in Ephesians 6 and verse 12. We are here to increase the size of God's kingdom. We are here to do battle. Now, I want to introduce you to someone. I want to introduce you to David. But I want to introduce you to David back when he was simply Jesse's son. He wasn't King David who had slain his tens of thousands. He was the youngest of Jesse's children. And over in 1 Samuel chapter 16, God had sent Samuel to look for a king. And Samuel had found suitable applicants in 7 of Jesse's sons. They were tall and handsome, well-shaped, well-suited, but God had not found the man for the job yet. Samuel had to ask Jesse if he had another son. Oh, imagine that. Imagine Jesse's son wasn't even presentable enough to be at the gathering of the family. But he wasn't there. The Bible describes him though as ruddy and a beautiful countenance, goodly to look to. Now I went and looked up ruddy. Ruddy means having a healthy reddish color, usually resulting from outdoor life. And in David, God had found a man. Now you're a bit quiet. So we're going to read 1 Samuel 16 and verse 13. 1 Samuel 16 and verse 13. We could get that on the screen. 1 Samuel chapter 16 and verse 13. And let's read. Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brethren. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. So Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. Now, first thing, when you are going about the business of building God's kingdom, the first thing you must be is anointed. It says that the Spirit of the Lord was on David from that day. You must know who you are and what you are about. You must know which side you are on. You cannot come to fight God's battles and build his kingdom with an anointing from the devil. You must be anointed by God. Now, 1 Samuel chapter 17, I think it's verse 1. It was a time of battle. The Philistines had gathered their armies for battle. And the Israelites had gone out and set up camp. And they were preparing themselves for war. Now the Bible describes it. The Philistines were camped over on one mountain, and the Israelites were camped on another mountain, and there was a valley between them. And from how the Bible describes it, it seems you could see each camp from the other camp. So the Israelites could see the Philistines, and the Philistines could see the Israelites clearly. Now Jesse had 3 sons who were in camp. They were at war. And our story picks up when he sends David to the Israelite camp with some supplies. David carried corn and bread and cheeses for his brothers and their captain. And David is now in camp and he's talking to the soldiers. And as he talks, he hears a strange sound. David hears an ungodly sound. David hears the thunderous voice of Goliath bellowing and echoing through the valley. Goliath is once again announcing the challenge. He's stating the grounds of agreement. He's taunting the Israelites to send someone to fight him. 1 Samuel 17, verses 8 to 10. Let's read. We're going to read together. 1 Samuel 17, verses 8 to 10. We're going to read exactly what Goliath said. He says, and stood and cried unto the armies of Israel, and said unto them, why are ye come out to set your battle in array? Am I not a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose your man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then we will be. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and servants. Verse 10. And what did he say? I want you to note this carefully. What did he say? I what?
I define the armies of Israel
this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. And now when David heard this threat, his blood started to boil. David got angry. He started asking questions about who this man was. He wanted to know why Goliath was allowed to speak about the people of God in such a disrespectful manner. And David started to inquire. And David's brothers started to give him a cursing, or what we say in Kittitian parlance, a good abusing. In 1 Samuel 17 verse 28, and Eliab his eldest brother heard when he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. Now this morning, the voice of Goliath represents the world. You see, the world is loud and rude when talking to the church. The world is often openly challenging the church to battle. The world shouts that homosexuality is quite alright. The world proclaims that sin is sweet. The world says that sex before marriage is something to be proud of. The world boasts that there is nothing wrong with teenage pregnancy. The voice of the world shouts and echoes that sins have sizes and the occasional white lie is something to be admired. The world dressed in its shiny brass armor that just glitters like gold yells that drugs and drinks make you more of a man or a woman. But all that glitters is not gold. Sometimes it is just brass. The world does not show you the overwhelming increase in HIV/AIDS. It doesn't show you the challenging life or the challenges that comes with teenage pregnancy. It doesn't show you how sin drags you down until you can sink no further. You ask, where is the church in all this? But you see, the church is right here in verse 11. Let's go to verse 11. The church is right here. We're going to read 1 Samuel 17 and verse 11.
Take it in,
When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistines, they were dismayed. Now I'm going to tell you something. The camp of Israel today represents the church. The world had openly defied the church and spoke against it. But what? The church was dismayed. And what? Dismayed. I have to look it up. It says to lose courage or resolution because of alarm or fear. The church was dismayed. You see, the church was afraid of what it thought the world could do. For 40 days, Goliath had bombarded the Israelites with threats and curses. And for 40 days, the church had cowered in its shoes. The church was in camp. And how many of you have been to camp? I don't care what your age is. Spiritual retreat, camp, anything. How many of you have been to camp? Oh, I thought more of us have been to camp. For those of us who have been to camp, we know that we have to wake up every morning and have devotion, right?
Yeah.
Camp is a time of spirituality, a time when relationships with God are nurtured and grown, a time of study. The church is supposed to be at its best in camp. The church should have been at its strongest, but yet it cowered and shook and was greatly afraid. Now take into consideration where the church was. The church was on a high. The church was on the mountaintop. And it kind of reminds me of the church today. You see, the church has come to a time where Christians are no longer persecuted for their faith. We no longer have to hide and worship. We now have a form of authority. And we have risen. No, we have not risen out of the dust, but we have been pushed to the forefront. The church of our time has reached a frightening high. The church of Israel was on top of the mountain. The church had to climb to get to the top. Much pressure and persecution had been faced to get to the mountaintop. But now that we have gotten there, we have become complacent. We no longer care that the world is hurling insults at the church. We have reached our destination, you see. The church is now set up. The church is saying to the world, we don't care what you say as long as you stay over there, and we'll stay over here, and we won't trouble you. You can say all you like about us, but once you leave us alone, we won't make a fuss. The frightening thing is that the world appeared to be on the same level with the church. The Philistines were on the mountaintop as well. But you see, a kingdom builder knows that battles are not really fought on the top of the mountain. Battles are fought in the valley. And we want to thank God for the upset in this case. And this case, in this time, the upset was David. You see, it's not easy being the one who changes the way things are done. And the first person to come at David was his oldest brother. Now let me tell you something. Family and friends are going to be the first people to discourage you. They're going to come and point out your weaknesses. You see, Eliab called David what? Proud and naughty. You see, family and close friends know exactly where to hit you to knock you down. They know your shortcomings. They know what gets you riled up. They know what trips you up. They know what gets you going. But little do they know that these things no longer make you stumble. They don't know about the time spent in prayer and devotion with God, fighting over you to get over your weaknesses. They don't realize that your stumbling blocks have now become stepping stones. You see, David just pushes aside the arguments and said, what in verse 29, what have I done now? Is there not a cause? When you are a kingdom builder, you have no time to argue with those who are not with you. David simply turned around and continued finding out what he needed to know. You see, David was fighting for a cause. Now, the next place that discouragement might come from is kind of frightening too, because it might come from your spiritual leader or your pastor. And Saul said to David, what? Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. The very pastor told David that he wasn't qualified for the job. Discouragement comes from all corners. You see, if building the kingdom involves upsetting the same setup that is causing the kingdom to fail. You didn't hear that? Building up the kingdom involves upsetting the same setup that is causing the kingdom to fail. So if the kingdom is not failing, then you're in good hands. We are all kingdom builders. If everything that we are doing is working, then we are good kingdom builders. But how does David respond to Saul? He tells him about the lion and the bear that he had to kill because what? They were attacking his sheep. Now, I don't know how many of you have seen a lion or a bear in real life. I had the opportunity to see a lion. And I would be, if it wanted my sheep, I would have told it, go. Take what you want and I'll take the remainder. And a bear is one of the most agile creatures. It can climb, it can swim, and it can run extremely fast. And you would think David would run from the bear. David ran to the bear. You see, these small tasks had built up David's faith and courage. These small tasks are what makes you a great kingdom builder. When you wake up every morning and you spend time in prayer and devotion, you are preparing to be a kingdom builder. When you spend time making the Bible your book of study, you are in training to be a kingdom builder. When your friends invite you to a function that will compromise your Christian morals and you say no, your strength is increasing. When you're tempted with drugs, when you're tempted with cheating on a test, when you have to wrestle it out with premarital sex and you overcome, you are setting up yourself for battle. You are slowly getting stronger as a kingdom builder. Now David had been preparing for Goliath ever since he started looking after sheep. The task at hand is not necessarily the lifelong work. So now what? They can't talk David out of it, so Saul now offers him his own armor. This is a problem, because David has not proved Saul's armor. It might be a good armor for Saul, but it may simply hold David back. Other people's blessing can be your curse. I want to point you to something. 1 Samuel 17 and verse 5. 1 Samuel 17 and verse 5.
So you listen to it.
And I want you to see this. I'm going to read it from the Bible. Let's read. And what? And he had an helmet of brass upon his head. And he was armed with a coat of mail. And the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels. So this is Goliath. I want you to go to 1 Samuel 17 and verse 38. 1 Samuel 17 and verse 38. And what? Saul armed David with his, and he put what? And he also armed him with what? Now Saul was dressing David like Goliath. But you see, that's a problem. When you're fighting the enemy, you can't fight the enemy looking like the enemy. We are not in undercover work. Our position is not to look like the enemy. We are to go with our strength. You see, David had not proved Saul's armor. As I told you, it would be good armor for Saul, but it would simply hold David back. We cannot fight the enemy looking like the enemy. Just so, we must use our own gifts to build the kingdom of God. You see, I can give you my story, but not my spirituality. I can share my finance, but not my faith. I can give you my prayers, but not my power. I can give you my testimony, but you still have to be tested. You see, Saul's armor fit him quite well, but it was too heavy for David. We each have our gift that suits us perfectly. Some can sing, some can play a musical instrument, some have great people skills, some cook, some preach, others teach. But each person has a unique gift that can be used in the battle of kingdom building. David took a sling and 5 smooth stones, and with that he killed the giant of Goliath. What is your sling today? What are your 5 smooth stones? Is your faith strong enough to make you an efficient kingdom builder? Are you ready to accept the smooth setup that doesn't really help to build up the kingdom? It is time to give God everything so He can make you a kingdom builder. You see, we have to embrace the fruits of the Spirit in order to do battle in kingdom building. They are love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance. We have to take them and place them into our daily lifestyle so that we can be excellent kingdom builders for God. Now I'm going to ask you this morning, Miss Davis, do you want to be a kingdom builder for God? Let me see you put up your hand. Do you want to be a kingdom builder for God? No, you want to be a kingdom builder for God. So I'm asking you now, if you plan to be a kingdom builder for God as best you can, I invite you to stand to your feet. If your pledge this morning is to be a kingdom builder for God, just stand to your feet. If you want to say, Lord, let the fruits of your Spirit live out in me as I build up your kingdom, I want to invite you to move forward today. You see, when I